So I'll let you know, you can see from the title here, Can We Really Lose Situational Awareness? Musings from a Former Operator. This is a work in progress. It's still something I'm trying to get my hands around, so it's not a final finished product, so it is something that I'm just kind of continually trying to work on, and so I figured if I just put musings up there, it buys myself a little bit of freedom to be able to run my mouth off a little bit and not perhaps necessarily be completely dialed in. But situational awareness is something that I've been really, really interested in. If there's one kind of human factors area that probably holds my interest the most, it's probably situational awareness, because I have challenges with it. I think as a firefighter, that was probably my greatest challenge, was trying to maintain or have some semblance of situational awareness, however you define that or whatever you think that means. I think I found a home in academics because I'm really comfortable being in my head, thinking a lot. But when you're in your head thinking a lot, there's a cost to that, which means you're missing a lot of things that are happening kind of out right in front of you at a given moment in time. And so that was kind of a continual challenge I had as a firefighter, was I had some great stuff running between my ears, but what I paid for was that it meant I was missing some things at times happening in front of me. And in this world, when you miss stuff that's going on in front of you, there's a potential cost, and that's getting yourself effed up or hurt, which I was pretty good at doing that too, especially from the jump side of things. I definitely self-inflicted some pain at times because I didn't have the best essay that I possibly could have. So, like I said, something I've been toying with, messing around with, trying to get a better understanding of just what exactly is situational awareness. So I'm going to show you a video. It's a little bit graphic, I'll tell you that. So consider yourself forewarned. It's dash cam video, as you can see. It's Dane County, Wisconsin. The person that you see there is a deputy by the name of Dale Vedo. There's a 15-year-old kid down the highway in a stolen car. He's stolen a car, and Deputy Vedo now is trying to throw out some stop strips because they figure if we flatten the tires, we'll have a much better chance of getting this kid slowed down, because right now he is driving really fast and really erratically. So not a great day at work for Deputy Vedo. Both legs broken, clavicle broken, shoulder separation, but that's not bad considering, yeah, a lot worse. Very easily that could have been a whole lot worse. Kid gets juvenile probation. They put him away in juvenile lockup for a little while. When he's let out 3 days later, he steals another car. So not a great story on the side of the kid, but for Deputy Vedo, also a high-risk occupation and a really tough day at work for him. And I think we see things like that, and there can be the impulse or the tendency to say, what? That he lost situational awareness. Somehow, Deputy Vedo lost his essay that contributed to that outcome. And my argument is going to be a little bit different. But we're going to follow that lost essay path for a little while and kind of see where it gets us. So if we lose essay, that presumes then that we had it. At some point, whatever it is, however we define it, we had it at some moment, and something happened that caused us to lose it. So what is it that we had? Well, if you've taken any of the L curriculum, L180, L280, L380, L381, etc., the L curriculum has historically kind of defined it as this very simplistic view that it's how well our perception matches reality, which is a good start, but that really comes nowhere near close enough to really kind of fully understanding what situational awareness is. Ensley and Garland went a little bit farther and said it's knowing what's going on around you, and then Ensley, kind of 5 years previous to that, had given us what I think is probably the best working definition of it, which is this perception of elements in environment within a volume of time and space, the comprehension of their meaning and the projection of their status into the near future. That's a much better definition of what SA is. Again, so if we're going to believe this line of thought that it's something that we have that we can lose, what we had was probably best described as this last thing. And we know it's important because it sits right at the top of our decision-making process. We use SA, we gather that information, and then we use it to make decisions, with the idea being, or the philosophy, that the better our SA, or the more effective our SA, the better our decisions are. And we live and work in a high-risk world where our decisions have consequences. The better decisions we make, the better job we do of mitigating risk. So our decisions are really weighty. Our decisions have huge importance. So if that's the case, then we go upstream from there and realize, yeah, SA is pretty damn important. It's pretty important to have good SA, whatever that is. Ensley came up with this model. She's brilliant. She's done fantastic work. This model being one of the things that she's come up with. I'm kind of simplistic, and I get kind of, and I'm distractible, so I get a little lost in the moving parts of all of that. It's a little too complex for me to, I want something simple and applied and that I can take with me real quickly. And it's in that model. It just kind of has to be boiled out a little bit. And if you boil that out, what you come up with is what is in that definition that she provided earlier, which is the perception piece. So we're perceiving what's going on. So if we're an operator and we're out in our operational environment, we're perceiving what's happening. And the next step is we comprehend, or we understand what that means. So not only do we perceive it, we comprehend it, we know what its meaning is, and then the last step is we're able to take all of that and put it into a future time and make sense of it as well. So for instance, I'm initial attacking, I see this fire, I perceive what's going on, I comprehend that it's in a certain fuel type and a certain topography at a certain time of day with a certain set of weather conditions, and I comprehend and understand all that, and then I'm also able to make the next step and have at least some idea or understanding that in an hour, it's probably going to look like this, all things considered. In a day, it's probably going to look like this. In a week, it's probably going to look like this, depending on what sorts of inputs we have into it based on resources and our attack efforts and all of that. That's a pretty complex understanding of something if not only we perceive it, we comprehend it, and then we're also able to be kind of fortune tellers and know that at a given time in the future, it's probably going to look like a certain thing. So how are we able to do all of that? Because again, I think there's just this belief that generally most of the time we have SA, and then every now and then we lose it. I'm going to take you down a different path here eventually, but how are we able to do all of that? Well, I think for all of us, it's individual ability. I think most, if not all of you, have gravitated or navigated your way into this profession because you have some individual natural ability to be able to work in a very complex and dangerous, risky world. You just have some abilities that most people in the regular population don't have. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be in this room. So there's an individual ability component to it, and then there's a training component to it, i.e. this, and whatever comes from this, and whatever training it is that you do back at your home units, and whatever self-development you do, and however you broadly define training, that's a piece of it. And then the last one, this magical capital E thing, experience. Some of you in here brand new, some of you in here with decades of experience, a lot of you somewhere in between that. But these three things then kind of collectively, I think, form whatever it is that we want to call situational awareness. Our own traits and skills, the training that we've had and been subjected to and taken part in, and then lastly, our experiences, whatever those might be. So we're still on this path of it's something that we can lose. What happens when you lose something? Hopefully, You want to figure out why the hell you lost it so that you can mitigate, hopefully, losing it again. Because if it's your phone or your wallet or your keys or SA, and it's important, first off, we want to find it, and then we want to figure out, how did that happen? Because I don't want that to happen again, because that sucked. So again, we're still on this path of it's something that we can lose. Let's find it. Let's figure out why. So if we look at SA the same way, should we look at SA the same way? That it's something that we can lose? And that if it's something that we can lose, then we want to figure out why we lost it, or we can be at this point, which I think is a good analogy for fire. Initial attack, and you've got some coordinates, or you've got some direction from a lookout, or whatever it might be, and you're trying to find this smoke out in the middle of nowhere, and you're on this 2-track, and you get to this spot, and you're like, I don't know which way we go. And we know that historically we've kind of been on this road of it's something that we can lose. I'm just going to propose a different route to take, a different kind of philosophy or a way of looking at situational awareness, which is it's not something that you can lose, which is a little bit different kind of belief system. And if that's the case, then for number one, maybe I never had it to begin with. Because again, if it's this complex, if it's perception and comprehension and projection, maybe I never had it in the first place. I never perceived it. Most, at least based on the evidence and the research that's been done, about 3/4 of all human error, at least in the aviation world, happens because they never perceived the problem in the first place. So if we extrapolate those findings to our world, probably most accidents happen because we just simply didn't see it in the first place. So what might be going on then if I never had SA even to begin with? I didn't lose it. I never had it to begin with. Well, maybe fatigue is coming in. Some human operator conditions have surfaced which just made it impossible for me to really ever have effective SA. Maybe it was insufficient training or experience or some combination thereof. So let's flash back to our video. Do we say that Deputy Vetto lost SA, or can we take a different path and say maybe he never had it in the first place? Okay. Now that opens up a whole different kind of way to investigate that. How often do you think he probably practices throwing out stop strips to stop a car that's moving at a high rate of speed down the highway? I can't imagine they do that very often in a real world setting. I can't imagine the training experience of that is super developed. My guess would be he's maybe never done it before, or if he had done it before, very, very few times. So now maybe we've got some training issues or some experience issues that we need to look at instead of just saying, poor guy lost SA that day and got his legs broken. And then maybe the environmental level, again, something I don't think we fully understand the effects of, especially chronic, long-term conditions that we have to face as firefighters: smoke and dust and ash and poor sleep and crappy food and all these things that are kind of part and parcel and descriptive of the job that you do. I don't think we fully understand how impactful a lot of those things are on our performance, especially those of you who have done this job for year after year after year. I don't think we have a handle on that. And so maybe those in some way play a role into us never developing SA in the first place. And then the last bullet, which is just a whole bunch of question marks, there's got to be all sorts of other things that are out there that keep us from ever having SA even to begin with. And then the second one is, I didn't lose it. I don't think we ever lose SA. I think what's probably more accurate is our SA was somewhere else. We still had SA, we just didn't necessarily have SA at the most relevant place in terms of risk mitigation. So at the operator level, maybe it's distraction. Maybe it's an intrapersonal issue. You've got something going on from a mental health standpoint. You've got something going on in your life that's demanding your time and your focus and your resources and your energy, and it's making it really tough to be able to see what's going on out in front of you in the operational world because there's something significant going on for you personally. Maybe it's an interpersonal issue. two crew members fighting, you having a fight with somebody else, some other dynamic, because humans are complicated and messy and we don't always necessarily get along with one another. There's something happening from an interpersonal standpoint that is got your situational awareness right now. That's a possibility. And then some environmental things, perhaps. Fire is pretty chaotic. There's a lot of things going on. We manage that chaos really, really well, but at the same time, it's a very, very busy environment in terms of all the inputs that are coming in. And there's all sorts of competing events for our attention. And at times, some of those competing events might grab our situational awareness. So we have SA, it's just on something else. Like this guy, right? Can you say that guy lost SA? I don't think so. I don't think if we followed this through and that poor guy gets hurt in some way and we were to investigate that, I don't think it would be accurate to say he lost SA. He's got great SA. He just got great SA on something else that's not super relevant from a risk standpoint to where he is right now. Something really has his attention. Something really has his SA. But I think we could all argue that at this point in time, it should probably be on that and not on whatever it is that's got his focus at the present moment. So how do we apply that? Again, that's all theory. That's my musings part of it. It's easy for me to stand up here and talk about it. It's a lot harder to take those dots and make sense of it and figure out, well, what the hell does that mean for me in my daily job? How do I take that and make any sense of it and have it be a useful tool for me? Well, I think one of the things that we can do then is continually asking ourselves the question, do I have SA right now? Instead of just assuming that we generally have it all the time, counter that. Don't believe that. Ask yourself all the time, do I really have SA right now on what's going on? Take a step back. Ask that question. If I don't feel like the answer is satisfactory, I reanalyze it. I bring somebody else in perhaps and say, here's what I'm thinking, what do you see? Or we have some countermeasure to that. But we're continually asking ourselves, do I really have a perception and a comprehension and a projection of what's going on in front of me right now? That's a whole lot more complicated, but that's at least moving towards some semblance of a strategy. And then the second bullet, which is, all right, if I do have focus on something, is that the most relevant thing that I need to be paying attention to? These crew members are having a massive breakdown right now in their interpersonal world. These two crew members are having a massive conflict with one another. And here I am the supervisor, or I'm the IC, or I'm somebody who's got to contend with that fallout. Is that what should have my attention right now? You can't just say yes or no, because we don't know necessarily the significance or the context or what it means, but chances are, no, that's probably not the thing that I really need to be focusing on right now. I need to be more heads up on what's going on operationally, because that's where my greatest risk is out here somewhere, whatever here looks like. So how do we do that? Well, I think the strategies are, again, this is the applied part. This is where it's easy for me to talk about it and harder to actually get the boots on the ground and make it work. But I think we have to do a better job of just kind of these intra-system checks of just, how am I right now as a human operator? What status am I in? And making that tough call of, you know what, at times, based on where I'm at right now, maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe I need to punch out. Maybe I need to take some time off. Maybe I need to get some extra help. Maybe I need to get somebody to backfill with me or help me right now because I don't feel like I'm an effective operator because of whatever it is that's going on that I've detected or realized on my intra-system check. I'm comfortable enough analyzing myself to make that decision. But that's tough for our demographic, because we're super good at helping other people. We're shitty at helping ourselves. I'll make that as a massive generalization, so it's not always necessarily true, but that's a blanket statement that I feel pretty comfortable making, which is based on our values and our core beliefs and things like that make us firefighters. We're really good at helping other folks, but we don't do a great job of helping ourselves necessarily. But I think we need to get better at that and maybe in a case like this of making that tough call and saying, ooh man, I need some help. The helper needs some help sometimes. And then the next bullet, which is awareness to what's going on around you, right meow. External. First one's internal, the second one's external. Here's a challenge. If we were to kind of have the ability to monitor where we're at as human operators, we spend a huge amount of time on either end of this continuum. And that continuum is the past or the future. We spend a huge amount of our time cognitively thinking about things that have already occurred or things that are going to occur in the future. And we spend very, very little time in that little green area that says present. Where am I right now in this exact moment in time and space? Right now. We don't do that very well. We don't spend a whole lot of time doing that. That doesn't make us any different than any other human, I don't think. What we're looking for is this ability to, as Kabat-Zinn said, pay attention on purpose in the present moment, as if our life depended on it. This is the end state. This is hopefully what we're striving to get to, because this is, I think, going to position us best to be the most effective operators that we can be. To wake up from life on automatic. We're cognitively lazy, generally. We like to put things on autopilot, and we like to just kind of fly our way through with minimal inputs. Because it's got a protective strategy, it saves us energy, but there's a lot of times, especially in high risk, where we need to fly the plane. We need to be directly in control. We need to take it off autopilot, and we need to be as hands-on as possible. And then lastly, what we're looking for is some sort of attention training method that teaches us how to, as much as we can, be in the present moment with full focus. For mindfulness. And I think mindfulness is great. It's one of those concepts that can be loaded, I think, with some people because they attach religious connotation to it. It's not accurate. We're talking a-religious at this point. There's no religious connotations or derivations. We're simply talking about a belief set, a technique or a tactic in terms of being able to, as best we can, be in the present moment right now as much as we can. Putnam, the same guy that I talked to you about earlier with regard to not signing the South Canyon report, interesting cat, very, very interesting guy. He talked about it and said if we can get a better handle on these side trips that we take, and as best we can come back to the main focus, whatever it is, but at the same time realizing it's part of the human condition to go off on side trips every now and then mentally. But especially in high risk, we need to come off of those side trips as quickly as we can and get back on point. It's going to keep us more effective and more safe as fire operators. Savaland and Pupility, this is from the write-up of the 2009 Backbone fire. At that fire, a rappeller was killed. If you're a student of fire, you might remember or have an understanding of that incident. It's fascinating stuff. Again, unfortunate, tragic. It sucks. A kid died, a young kid died because of some very, very interesting human factors components in terms of how he hooked up to that descent system and other people's checking of that system that was faulty, and yet they didn't realize that it was faulty. He went out, weighted up the system. He detached from the descent device because he was never actually fully connected to the descent device and plummeted, fast roped 200 feet down to the ground and got killed out of it. And this is a fascinating, fascinating human factors write-up of that. But what Jim and Ivan came up with is this idea that there's got to be something in this mindfulness and sports psychology literature that applies and works for us in terms of what we do, of having a better understanding of how to operate in the present moment. How do we do that? Well, there's a lot of different ways to do that. We can take official trainings. That's probably not going to happen for most of us. Maybe some of you do yoga and meditation. I know they're gaining more and more traction, but that's really kind of the core of a lot of meditative and yoga practices is this concept of mindfulness and being in the present as much as we can. But I think it's like a lot of things or most things is just if we simply practice it more, of just, again, cognitively assessing what's going on, being aware of these side trips that we take, getting back on focus at times when we need to be, and just simply practicing these techniques of being more present. Again, very easy for me to stand up here and say that, much harder to actually apply that in the complex environments you folks work in. The external now is just a concept that I've been messing around with in terms of trying to come up with a concept that might capture kind of what we're chasing. And for now, I've just simply called it the external now, which is where I have what I think is pretty good SA. My focus is externally based, and it's in the present moment. And I'm dialed in on what's most operationally relevant for me at the time. That's what I'm kind of loosely defining as the external now. How do we get there? Well, I think most of you spend most of your time there because, again, you've gravitated into this profession because you have unique skill sets and abilities that separate you from most other people. I think most of you by default kind of work in this realm of what's kind of going on around here? What's happening in my world that I need to be paying attention to? I think you all do a pretty good, if not a great job of that just on a normal basis. But again, something that we can augment and get better at through practice. And then however we define or operationalize mindfulness, if we can get better at, especially in high-risk environments. Because as the risk goes up in the worlds that we operate in, we need to figure out how to pay more effective attention to be able to countermeasure and mitigate that risk. Some things are very, very not risk-free, because nothing's risk-free. But some things have much less risk to them than other things. And a point I'm going to make here in a second, but I'll jump into it now, is you're not firefighters. I mean, I make this point all the time, is that might be what you're called, but you're not really firefighters. It's part of the duties that you do, or a lot of the duties that you do, but it's not completely what you do. You do all sorts of other really fascinating things on a given day-to-day basis. And a lot of those things, if not most or all of those things, have risk to them. Some of them just have more risk than other pieces. And so what I propose is kind of this different fire triangle where you've got this ability to work in the external now, where you've got as good of SA as you possibly can have, and you've got great training because Mike supported it and Bo or somebody else pulled it off and got it all together. And then you've got your unique experiences, whatever those might be, in fire or other occupations that you've had, and you conglomerate all of that into being risk managers. That's what I mean when I say that you're not a firefighter. You're more of a risk manager. And you go out and contend with risk every single day. And oftentimes, again, that's fire. But a lot of days it's not. Go scout a timber sale. Go jump on that four-wheeler and drive around this unit. Go deal with this campground or whatever it is that your daily position description entails that you have to do that's not fire. Every single one of those things has risk to it. And so how well are you able to be aware of what those environments look like and tap into your training and tap into your experiences so that you can deal with that risk as risk managers? Realizing first and foremost, it's never perfect. You're going to deviate, you're going to drift, you're going to lose attention, you're going to go off on a side trip. You might not be fully 100% in terms of your operational capabilities, and then you have to make adjustments and do whatever is necessary. But don't get wrapped around the axle that you're not perfect, because nobody's perfect. It's a process, not a product. We have to continually just try and get better, realizing that we're never perfect. We're never the best we can, or rarely we're the best we can possibly be. We're working on a project through Joe's support at MTDC. It's called the Black. It's a system that's ultimately going to end up being a resource for firefighters to help them deal with and contend with the challenges that they have to deal with and be hopefully more effective operators and less prone to injury. And here are some resources. So a lot of that is now still behind the scenes and not yet available, but some of it actually does have some consumability that you can access some of this. And one of those is a podcast that we've been working on started last year. We're now into season 2. That's called On the Line. You can access that through iTunes or just simply go to the Libsyn site, which is www.ontheline.libsyn.com. That'll bring you right to to the podcast where we dive into all sorts of different topics: hydration, nutrition, suicide, heat-related illnesses, the PAC test, all sorts of topics that are relevant to firefighters. We've got some social media arms as well. Facebook, maybe you've sworn off Facebook because of their struggles. Disregard if you have, but if you have any kind of interaction with Facebook, the Black Performance is our site there. We also have some Instagram and Twitter accounts where, again, we're pushing content, we're pushing information that we hope is helpful to you as operators. Thanks for your attention.